Let's look at an assignment that requires reading and writing a file. Now, I also want to go into some general topics about programming. I think in a lot of ways students kind of look at this wrong. What you should be looking at is the problem itself and breaking it down into various tasks. And if you're using a high-level language, and Python is high level, so is Java, C Sharp, etc. If you're using a high-level language, whatever problem you are trying to solve or whatever operation you determine that you need to perform, someone has probably already done this. And a lot of times the functionality that you need is actually just built into the language itself. Other times, someone will look at the problem and say, I'm going to write some code for that and make it available to the community. And this is what we term libraries. So let's look at that briefly here. This is from the Python docs, talking about the standard Python standard library. And you might remember when we did the Python installation, there was a question about, do you want to go on and compile, I think it's what the way it worded it, the standard library. So look at this list here. It talks about built-in functions. Now, you don't need the library for these. These are just things that are built in. And there's a lot of different things. And we're going to look at some more things here as we go. Now, there are also things that are part of the what we call the standard library. So it says here, in addition to the standard library, there's an active collection of hundreds of thousands of components, from individual programs and modules to packages and entire application development frameworks, available from the Python package index. So that's in addition to what you see here. So I think it's helpful to break your problem down into pieces and then go looking for the appropriate code to do whatever needs to be done. And while we're here, let's look at the Python package index here. And back up here. I usually open this in a new tab. So this is what it looks like when you open it in a new tab, and this is notice to type the slash. And I did this since we're in the chapter on files. Notice here there's 10,000 plus projects for files. So it's obvious there's a lot of things that can be done with files. And a lot of people have done a lot of work to help you with files. And on the first page here, I thought this was interesting. Files Organizer. So let's click on this just to see how it looks. So over here, you can download the appropriate files. It has docs and some discussion of the what it'll do for you. As we have up here as well. This one is a great tool to organize your photos, videos, documents, etc. based on their date. When you run the tool, all the files in the current directory will be moved to the corresponding folders organized by month and year. Well, that's interesting. I could see a use for this. And I just picked this out at random to show you how this works. And hopefully I'll get around to making a... oh, here's one thing we can talk about. What I was going to say is hopefully I'll get around to making some sort of assignment at the last requiring you to use something from a outside package. That's what they call these things. But notice right here, this is the name of it, files organizer, etc. And notice here, to do the installation on this from the command line, and this works better if you do it from the directory or the folder where you have Python installed. You'll get in less trouble. Pip is the installer, pip3, and this is the install command, and then you give it the file name, and this will make it available for use inside of Python. And then when you're using it, you just reference it. Actually, this one looks like it runs on its own. Yeah. So there's a lot of things out there. I mean, it's just incredible. We can go back here and 650,000 projects, and this is what's available for Python officially. So again, I think what you want to do when you're learning programming is spend time on this whole concept of let's break the problem down and figure out what we're going to need to do, and then go find the appropriate code and put it together. So let's break this problem down, and I might make another little change to this, I don't know. So this might not be the current version. So this assignment here says using the code snippets above or starting from scratch. So these code snippets are in the document above this, and I'll talk about that some other point. It's simply little shells, little snippets of code that'll read line by line from a file and write line by line to a file, and you can use that as your starting point. So what we want to do here is, of course, write, document, and test a Python program that will read integers from the file below, and this is your file, large file of numbers, and it's a text file, and find the minimum, maximum, and average. Okay, so let's make some notes here. Find min, max, average. And as soon as you read this, you should be thinking, okay, if I want to find the minimum, I'm going to probably start out with something called min of numbers from file equals, and you want this to be really large. I'll set it for 1,000,000, and depending on your input, the range of numbers in your input file, you may have to change that. And what's going to happen here, and hopefully you've looked at this type of code and thought about it, is we're going to compare every number to this, and if it's less, that's going to become the new minimum. So therefore, to start out, you set this really high. Max, just the opposite. Max of numbers from file equals, I'm going to go with 0 here, and it depends if you know you're going to have negative numbers You could make this even smaller, something in the negative range. But we know we need both of these. We're going to just make a note of that. And then for the average, average requires a running total. So running total of numbers from file. And if you're sitting there thinking, I really don't want to type all this out every time, recall that in Wing, after you enter this variable name the first time, every other time you start typing, it's going to offer you this. All you have to do is click on it. So, and this is much more descriptive. Tells you what's going on. So you're going to need the running total and the number, or how about this? Let's call this the count of numbers from the file. Okay, so I'm going to make a note here, set both to 0. And depending on the language that you're using, some languages require that you declare variables and initialize them before you use them. Some don't. I think it's just good manners to do it anyway. I think you'll cause less trouble for yourself if you just go on and declare your variables and initialize them. And sometimes that's all you have to do is just say running total of numbers from file equals 0. And these things are going to be done before we really get into the heart of the program. So this is all kind of prep work here. Okay, we really haven't gotten to the heart of this yet. So let's look at our next requirement here. We're told that the integers are in the range 0 to 99,999. So basically you have 100,000 possible numbers. You had 1 to 99,999 because you got to count 0. What we want to do here is we want to break these into blocks of 10,000 and count the number. Probably break them into blocks is not the proper terminology. We want to check ranges that are equivalent to 10,000 number blocks and count the number of blocks in the test or in the input file that actually fall into this range. So that's what that's telling you there. So let's see if we can make some sort of notes about that. And let's do this. I'll copy this. And what we want to do here is find the count of numbers falling into these ranges. Now, let's think about this. We're going to read in numbers. And by the way, we're going to have to convert them into an integer, by the way. So we're going to have something here like input number. Let me rewrite this. Is the input number between 0 and the first 10,000 range should be that. if so. And I'm going to call this count from, or count in range. Now, there's various, depending on your language, various ways of doing this. You can always do this. Take whatever's in this variable and add 1 to it. It's called incrementing. Some languages let you do this, because this is the kind of thing that happens so often that usually it's built into the language itself. So again, that's what I was getting back to earlier. Look at what needs to be done and then go find that functionality in the language that you're using. So depending on your language, or depending on your whims, do it usually one of a number of ways. Now, do this for all other ranges. Now, I didn't go into a lot of detail here about how to set this up. You could have nested if, then, else statements. That works. Or a case statement. And what you have available here is, again, depends on your language. So whatever it takes here to do this comparison, okay, some sort of conditional. Now, one other thing we're going to do here is, and let's go back up here, and let's say this variable here, we're going to have to initialize all these. So let's, this one is going to be one. So that's going to be 10,000 up to 19,999. So that range needs to be initialized as well. Oops. And you're going to need to do that for all of them, all the ranges. So that's that part. So what else do we need to do here? Let's see. We've considered what we're going to need to do here to find the min, the max, and the average. We got that. And these are initializations. The actual test of minimum and maximum and the counts is going to happen in the body of the program. And then we'll figure out what we need to output after we calculate this. So this is the framework of this. We're going to loop through, read from the file, and do comparisons on these numbers, update our running totals, check for min, check for max, count each number in a range and only one range. And then after that, after we're through looping through the whole file, then there'll be another section here for doing, let me get this back over here because where you could see it, doing any needed calculations and writing results to output file. Now, another thing I would do at this point is let's look at this a little more. I'd go right here and press enter a couple of times and put the word loop, read line from file, convert to integer, and let's see, add to running total. Test for min, test for max, and then do this part, find the count of numbers in these ranges, and somewhere along in here you're going to have end the loop. So let's break this down a little further. What we have here is, and I've mixed in some verbiage here with some more specific computer, it's not quite pseudocode, but you know, I'm naming variables and initializing variables here, etc. But here's the three sections. There's work that you do before you get started. Then there's the loop that actually does the bulk of the operation itself. In this case, you're going to read all the lines from the file. And then test, we got to add and run, keep a running total, test for min, test for max, and we forgot one thing here, running total, add to count of numbers. Need that in there too. And we're going to test for min, test for max. And then for each of the numbers, and this is all through this inside the loop, we're going to put any particular number into this block, or these blocks of 10,000. Okay, and we're going to increment the counts for each of these blocks as necessary, or as needed, or as appropriate. And then, once we run through the whole file doing this, we will have a running total, we'll have the number of numbers, or the count of numbers. We'll know what the min is and what the max is. With these two, we can calculate the average. And then these variables here will actually contain the answers to how many numbers are in the range 0 to 999, 9,999, etc. So this kind of gives you an idea of what you're going to need, how you're going to have to set your program up. So you have initialization, get everything, do it, you know, set where you want it, the loop, and then the post loop, any calculations that need to take place outside and in writing your results. So we've kind of got the program broken down here into pieces. And now all we have to do is convert it into the appropriate language. In our case, we're going to do Python.